So the idea of thinking about writing together with technology might seem a little bit strange, but I want to kind of give a broader context on this for a moment. First, if you really sort of think about it, writing systems themselves are a kind of a tool or a technology. No one is born knowing how to form letters or to read or to hold a pen or to type. So early on like for thousands of years, people have been thinking about whether speech or writing are more natural. And a pretty famous philosopher on this, Socrates, was someone who was pretty actually resistant to the idea of writing because he thought it was going to cause damage to humans, that it would cause us to be more forgetful, less able to think. So there was an idea about language and thought and expression where holding it in your head and then being able to voice it, to articulate it, was important for Socrates. And he thought if you had to kind of take notes, if you wrote it out, that maybe that was kind of a form of cheating, right? An unnatural development of civilization. Of course, ironically, we wouldn't know about Socrates if Plato hadn't written him down. But maybe some of you have a memory of learning to write, of having somebody correct your penmanship or the formation of letters, right? Part of the way we learn to read in our culture is learning also to write, but forming letters, whether you learned cursive or not, is one of the things that we're taught. And actually, for a lot of writers, the kind of materials, the tools they use can be something of interest. This is a pretty famous manuscript, the kind of draft copy of Jack Kerouac's novel, On the Road. And he got a deal on rolls of teletype paper. So instead of having to put pages, change from one page to the next when he was typing, he apparently composed on a typewriter, and he put this long, kind of almost infinite roll together so that he could just keep typing without having to stop. Because in an old school typewriter, unlike a word processor, when you get to the end of the page, you'd have to pull that piece of paper out, put a new one in, and begin again. So part of his compositional process, or at least the mythology around it, was, hey, I want to go with the flow, and he literally didn't want to be interrupted at the end of a page. I don't know if any of you have ever played with pens, but if you think about how, like, the kind of writing tool you use, does your ink smudge? Do you have an eraser on your pencil? That can sort of impact your practice a little bit. I was thinking about how when I went to college, my first essays were typed on a typewriter, and that had an impact. You could make small corrections with whiteout or a backspace, but if you made more than one or two mistakes, in order to make a change or an improvement, you had to start that page over again. That kind of incentivized a little bit more planning, unless you were a really quick and accurate typist. By the time I went to graduate school, we'd moved to word processors. We're still using paper, so that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, how even as computer technology came onto the scene, the end output was often still paper. We'd print it, and scholarly works like dissertations get bound up as if they're books. But it also made changes, even in the shift from typed to computer word processed academic writing. If you go into any library and look at the section, if they still have bound copies of theses and dissertations, you'll notice when the word processor comes on the scene, the publications become longer, they become thicker. What used to be a 110 or 120 page project now becomes 200, 300 pages. Something about access to a word processor allowed people to generate more words, longer chapters, longer paragraphs. Did that make the writing better? I don't know, but it seems to have changed it a little bit. To fast forward to more recent times, where your publication is more likely to find, your writing is more likely to find a space online. What difference does that make? Well, at least one difference is that often those online spaces also invite someone to respond to it. So you have some kind of commenting and feedback feature. Again, whether you're thinking about that as a writer or not, it may have an impact if you know that your audience is going to be able to speak back to you. So those are a couple of thoughts on writing and technology, like kind of up to, I don't know, 2020. And now in this course, we'll also be thinking about what difference things like AI make. But because I wanted to set it in this context of um, uh, an idea that actually some kind of issue of writing and technology has been kind of ongoing, that ChatGPT or AI are definitely new and arguably are changing things and or challenging things in some radical ways, but it's not as if in 2018 writing was done without any technology. Differently, but it was still an issue of a sort.